Can you hear me?
Yeah, we're good to go.
Okay. All right. You just froze on my screen. This my freaking browser is like being all crazy. I literally got in here a minute ago and then it didn't. It just
We've been live for 20
froze.
seconds now.
Oh, we are.
Yeah.
Oh, that's crazy. Well, I can't see anything. So hey, we're live. Cool.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I'll unfreeze at some point. Hey, what's going on? I'm at Minnick. John Sheeran. One of these sides. I don't know. I can't even see myself. So, what's going on? We are prepping you for the beginning of free agency, talking about the Bengals. We're going to talk about the Bengals roster step by step, position by position, as we get ready for free agency. So, John, first off, it's been, I guess, an eventful, also kind of a not eventful few days. um, any thoughts on anything going on recently with the Bengals, from the lack of use of the franchise tag, Carl Lawson's recent interview? Any hot takes?
Yeah, Lawson's really just the guy everyone's talking about, and rightfully so. There was speculation about the Bengals considering using the franchise tag on him, but wisely they did not, and probably for a reason that we'll get to in a minute, but also for the fact that it gives them an opportunity to either sign him long term, and for less of a cap hit in 2021, or if they happen to lose him, an opportunity to pay for a replacement and a competent one who's going to probably cost a little bit. So like Lawson, he was talking with Paul Daniel Jr. I think today about I heard nothing about the Bengals potentially tagging me. It didn't really make any sense, and he's right. It didn't make sense for both sides, but he's obviously their top priority in terms of an internal free agent.
He like really gets it too.
Yeah, he really does.
It was great.
I don't know like how many players know like the structure of the cap and stuff like that, and how No, you're a little bit frozen though.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm sorry. Well, keep rolling. Keep rolling. I couldn't hear you for a second. I hear you now. My bad.
Yeah, like it was refreshing to hear Lawson know the dynamics of the implications of the cap and what that means for their cap space and what they can do in the offseason. So we haven't really heard a lot from Lawson. I feel like obviously this past year we haven't heard a lot from players because of the lack of access and stuff like that. But Lawson is he's just a cool dude, and I think he just wants everyone to know that now that he's going to be in the news in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and it was really interesting. He's got a really good perspective on things. He's like, yeah, I like it here. I got a lot of people here. If it makes sense for my family, I'll leave.
Right.
So, it was a really really interesting interview, and I think I've had it interesting too. Like Bengals Twitter for months, at least weeks, has been offense built around Burrow, offense built around Burrow, and then they don't franchise Lawson, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, how bad is the defense going to be now? like what? We've been talking about this forever. That they, I found that kind of amusing. It's like, all right, now we care. They definitely now you're hearing some whispers too that the D line and pass rush could be a real priority.
Right.
There might be a lot going on with that, which is good. I mean, in my opinion, it's the O line and the D line. The O line first, but the D line really needs to be retooled as well. And then obviously getting another big time receiver would be great too. But to me, those are the two big things. So, all right, so let's get into it a little bit here. And I can't see anything, so I don't know if you can bring up the roster.
Oh, yeah.
Or not, but,
it's on screen.
I literally
right now.
have a black screen right now, so whatever, we're rolling with it. But so just looking at things, I want to start with special teams because I think it's going to apply to everything else. We're going to see in a lot of different areas that going into free agency, there's some sarcasm about, oh, great, we signed our long snapper, but that's a good piece to have Clark Harris back.
We do
They
not take
have
Clark Harris slander, especially around these parts. No, sir.
no. I mean, look at that guy. That guy's the man. But anyway,
Oh man, we lost him. Matt's dealing with some slight issues right now, but I'm sure he'll be back. But I think what he was trying to allude to is that Clark Harris is back, and Darren Simmons is still here. Clark Harris still wants a bag every single year. He just wants I think that's what he said to Paul Dehner Jr. Like, if this is a job that gets me $1 million a year, then there's nothing else that's going to give me that. He's 36, 37 years old. Even with Dan Gottsel still here on like a futures deal, Clark Harris is here to stay. And it's actually interesting because Kevin Huber is, I believe, scheduled to be a free agent, and in the next couple of days they might come together with a deal with him. I would imagine that they would want to keep those two together because that's a partnership that's lasted 11 years, I think, if I'm counting right. Kevin Huber was drafted 2009. Clark Harris joined the team, I think, around that time as well. So that's a lot of chemistry between two guys and that part of the team. I think, I don't know if Harris said this or if Simmons said this, but one of them said that Kevin Huber, he's looked as a punter, but he might be the best holder in the league, and obviously there's some bias with that, I guess. But for as long as Huber's been here and Harris has been here, when everyone has said that Clark Harris has never muffed a long snap, I don't think Kevin Huber's ever muffed a hold on a field goal or an extra point or anything like that. So Kevin Huber is valuable in multiple facets, and as long as he's still here, I'm sure. What do you think, Matt? In terms of Clark Harris and the relationship between him and Kevin Huber, that's something that the team would want to keep, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And having that familiarity, and hoping that maybe they're bringing in a new kicker, to know that you had this snap and the hold down. That's going to be something that's going to help that guy build some confidence, because all of a sudden, if you're training a new holder, if you have a rookie punter come in, because that's the thing, is that punters being holders in the NFL is very common. Punters being holders in the NCAA is less common. Mm-hmm. So you're not really necessarily getting a guy that has that experience. So, so having that aspect of it, especially if you do end up going with a younger guy or rookie, potentially a kicker, I think that'll be important for their confidence. So definitely getting Huber back would be great. You are either bringing Randy Bullock or Siebert back, or looking to make a change of kicker. So whether you want Randy back or not, that's a factor. That one of many things that could be changing here. You got Brandon Wilson, who's your kick returner, and he took the 6th most snaps on special teams last year. Excellent gunner on the punt team. Contributing in a lot of different areas. 269 snaps, 58% of snaps, special team snaps last year. So that's a big factor. And then as we get into that too, with your leading. Your leaders in snap percentage on special teams. Number 1 last year, Jordan Evans, free agent. Number 2, Cethan Carter, free agent. Number 3, Sean Evans, free agent. I just said Sean Evans. Sean Williams. And Sean Williams, I think, highly unlikely to return, right? 4 was Akeem. So he's coming back, obviously. And then 5, Samaje, free agent. Yeah. So, that's a lot of snaps, and they're playing roles that aren't that obvious. And, they're not, we see Sean Williams, running, leading the team in rushing on fake punts, but you don't see all these things. But those are some major factors. And last year, Lou Anarumo did a good job of going out and replacing Clayton Fedulum, who had been their number one guy. But I mean, that's a lot, and that's a factor. So this is kind of what this podcast is about, and the reason we're talking about special teams first is this is a factor to consider. When we're talking about tight end and fullback and safety, and running back, like those guys that we're not seeing playing on offense and defense can play pretty large roles as well. When you look at the special teams and the role that they can play in that way.
Exactly. And like, let's just start with Evans, because I think there was like I don't know, it was some big head in the media said like he could be in line for like a large payday. I'm not sure where that's coming from, because he barely plays on defense. I think he played like the least amount of defensive snaps this past year than he had in his entire career, which is funny because he had like the most sacks and he had interception with those like 50 something snaps. But if he's gone, then that kind of it kind of shifts where your focus is at linebacker. You're probably expecting Marcus Bailey to play on special teams a lot more, and along with Akeem Davis-Gaither continuing to still play there. But if you're thinking about bringing Josh Bynes back, like I don't know how much you're expecting a 32-year-old Bynes to contribute on special teams when you had a prime guy in Evans like that. Like, you have Keandre Jones on the roster right now. He just signed a futures contract. I'm sure if he somehow makes the team, you can carve out a role for him. But that's probably, you're looking at a prime candidate for a college free agent to kind of fill that role in that last 5th or 6th spot at linebacker, or you're just expecting Marcus Bailey to kind of step up in place for that. And with Wilson, like it's curious to me like what his market, if there is a market for him, because he's just a career backup at safety, but he has value at returner. How valuable is a great kickoff returner in this day and age in the NFL right now? Like, I don't know, and it's going to be interesting to see what the timeline, if the Bengals try to bring him back, and how aggressive they are in trying to do that, and if he's going to get a market out there, because I don't know how effective he would be as like a prime player on defense, but we know that he is very versatile and very effective in the roles that he plays on special teams as a gunner and as a returner. So like you said, there's a lot of snaps here to be had and potentially to be lost. And as long as Darren Simmons is still here, I'm sure he would have major input on bringing some of these guys back.
Yeah. So, I mean, potentially huge changes here. And obviously Simmons has done a really good job in the past of replacing some of these guys. So, I think there will be a plan, and I think he's a guy that will figure that stuff out. But, yeah, definitely something to consider when you're looking at it. So, you mentioned Bailey, so let's dig into linebacker a little bit. We can really start there. Linebacker is a position that they're very young. They went out and they got 3 guys. Bailey, I was just looking. Bailey played 29% of special team snaps last year. He only played in 11 games. He was a healthy scratch quite a bit during the year just because of the overall depth at linebacker. So, I mean, you do the math on that. He played less than 75% of the games, and you do the math on that, and it's the equivalent of playing like 40 snaps or 40% right. Or so so he was contributing in that area. He was definitely definitely helping out there, and a guy you could see stepping up into that role. Because you don't know about Bynes. Bynes also free agent. So a lot of potential changes there. And I think it's interesting because at the top of the roster, you let Bynes go, you let Evans go because he's not at the top of the roster, but he's ahead of Marcus Bailey last year anyway. That's creating opportunities. That's bumping those guys up. That Logan Wilson definitely steps into a prime role, and you probably see Akeem Davis-Gaither playing a pretty substantial role as well. Pratt may still be the starter, but Davis-Gaither could definitely step in and play a more prominent role there. So, yeah, I mean, at that point, you probably don't want to get younger. Are you looking for some veterans, that Austin Calitro types to come in and just kind of give you a little bit more of a veteran presence there? Because if you let Bynes go, if Pratt and Wilson are your starters, you've got 3 years of experience between them. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that position, and looking at bringing those guys back?
I think Bynes does come back. I think like Paul Daniel Jr. is very adamant that like he believes that he's coming back. He's not going to have a great market. He was a starter. He was a solid one, but he's a year older than he was last year, and he only got a year and 1.6 million on the open market. So I think we could see something like that. And a lot of the guys we're going to talk about, like that we have talked about, like they're not going to command deals that will greatly impact the salary cap. Like the Bengals can still do a lot of things that they want to do, but keep these core pieces together that fill out the part of the roster that not a lot of people think about, right? Like I think you're fine with Wilson, Davis Gaither, and Bailey developing at their own pace, doing the things that they should be comfortable doing at the stage of their career. You're looking for probably a big jump from Jermaine Pratt in year 3 as a full-time starter. And if you want to bring back Bynes for this, just because he's obviously familiar with the system and familiar with the guys that he was kind of grooming last year, because he's so much more experienced and older. But like I think that's fine. If you just try him out there as a starter early in the season, and then kind of like I guess kind of like what it was this year, like kind of ease him out and ease some of the younger guys into that role for just one more year, I think that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, it was interesting how I really enjoyed the way that they used those young linebackers early. With Pratt in year 1, they were like giving him 10 plays here or there, and it didn't seem like a great plan to really bring him along. But with Wilson and Davis Gaither, like they were in on like every third down basically. So it was interesting. Like they gave them a role, tried to carve them out of roles. So I think you hope that, especially Wilson, but honestly, I think Davis Gaither showed some really good potential this year too. So you kind of hope that those guys will cut a little bit more into Bynes' time, even early on. And I would say especially Wilson, who showed some really great promise there. So, yeah, I mean, I guess if they bring Bynes back, really you're looking at replacing Jordan Evans on special teams, and you've kind of got the natural replacement there in Bailey. So you don't really have a major need at linebacker from a starting standpoint or a depth standpoint. Would you agree with that?
No, absolutely. I think you're fine with just penciling in Wilson and Pratt and or Bynes if you bring him back, and then you just continue to use Davis Gaither to what he's good at right now. It'll be interesting to see what his development path is and how they kind of bring him along. I think I gave. I don't want to say I don't want to say I was too high on him, but I think I expected at least last offseason that he was capable of doing more when. Like if it was up to me, I would have had him doing like a lot more stuff, and that probably wasn't the best for him at that moment. I think they, like you said, they handled his first year very well, and they didn't ask him to do too much, and they asked him just to do what he's comfortable with right now. I think that was great for him. So I don't know how much more that we can expect from him in year 2, and that'll be something that we just have to watch as the offseason progresses and as the early season goes on. But I think you're definitely comfortable with Wilson and Pratt as your starters, at least in the beginning of the season, and then kind of grooming, Davis Gaither and Bailey to do a little bit more as the season goes on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think probably a lot of us were disappointed we didn't really see them using him more in like a pass rush type setting.
Right.
So it'd be interesting.
Especially like for how much they needed it.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Like just out of desperation, because there's some experience in that area. You would think you'd get a little bit more there. All right. So let's move on down to we touched on Carl Lawson in the intro. Man, the D line.
Look at this. Look at this right now. They have 4 nose tackles and like three techniques, and one of them is Geno Atkins.
Yeah, it's insane too, because you got Geno, who, I mean, there were when they shut him down for the season, when he shut himself down for the season, which he could have done in September, but chose not to. Right away it came out that something was going to happen. There was going to be some sort of agreement reached. He hasn't retired. We're going into free agency now, and so they haven't talked about moving him. We haven't really seen anything with that. So, we don't know what that's going to be. There did, I think it was the Zach Taylor interview. There was some implications like, man, we really like Geno. You know what I mean? I think it was the Zach Taylor. There was something I saw recently where they were kind of like really talking about how much they liked him. Um, so it makes you think. I mean, maybe it's a restructure, but there's definitely some money there that could help them out going into this season. And look, they had zero interior pass rush. As much as pass rush was a problem overall. Gino was playing hurt all year, which is now being confirmed. So that's a big time factor for them. And maybe there's more in Gino. Maybe we can keep getting it if he comes back and he's healthy. Obviously, some have been talking about this for a couple of years, but you do need to address that position. You need to draft somebody. You need to look to replace him. But I don't know. You think Gino might be back?
This is a great time to bring up. Like last year, right before round 2 of the draft started, the Bengals were like reported to be like interested in either Denzel Mims or Ross Blacklock, and everyone's like, "Why are they interested in a defensive tackle in round 2?" They needed a young 3 technique like 4 years ago.
Yeah.
They're so
I wanted
behind.
Jonathan Allen.
Yeah,
How long has that guy been in the league too? Right.
right. He's going on 5 years, and he's one of the best interior linemen. I'm
Yeah.
unfortunately wasn't as high on him, and I'm kicking myself for that. But like they needed a young 3 technique to groom under Atkins a long time ago, and now they kind of have to just handle this on the fly. Like I think they obviously have nothing but respect for Gino because why not? He's probably a future He's a good chance of being a future Hall of Famer. It just seems like he costs so much this year.
Thank you, Rob.
Yeah, he's going to be 33 years old. And he's coming off an injury that's impacted the entirety of his season. It's like the only chance he sticks around is either he takes a pay cut, which is just hard to see, like a guy of Gino's influence and stature to minimize himself into a lesser role, or they extend him and then they just push some money down the road. But again, like he's entering his mid 30s, and so much of his game was based off the fact that he was just crazy explosive and quick for his size. And like, you just wonder, even if the previous level was so high because he was so elite, like how much of a drop off is there going to be going forward? And I think they obviously have the utmost respect for him, but I think they realize that if they have a chance to get an upgrade, then unfortunately he's just one of those guys that they're going to have to cut weight. Like I think if money wasn't a factor, they would still want to keep him around because he just seems like the guy that wouldn't mind taking maybe a lesser role, I guess. But I don't know, man. It just seems like they will be determined to find some type of a younger upgrade.
It does say a lot about him that he played this year. He didn't have to. He had a very good reason to opt out. He had 2 very good reasons to opt out, and he chose not to do it. Then he was hurt, and he knew he couldn't be himself, but he wanted to play. And I mean, I think it says a lot about how he cares about the team. Because you don't do that for you.
Right.
I think if Gino was cut tomorrow, with the season he had last year, compared to if he was cut tomorrow and he just didn't play all year because he had been, like he was actually on IR all year. He's making more money if he's coming off IR than based on what we saw on film, I think. So I don't think there was any personal positive for him playing. In this year, especially when he could have gone on IR. They made him sign a waiver to play.
Right.
So he could have. It's not like COVID. It's not like the opt out where he was taking a pay cut. He could have had his full check. So yeah, I don't know. That says a lot about the guy. But I guess we better not get show kind of drain down on one person. In that spot they've got. Obviously, Reeder coming back, also coming off injury, unfortunately. They've got Covington and Daniels, who are both new guys last year and free agents. So Xavier Williams, same scenario. These are guys that I think played nice little roles when they came in, but it's like they don't have all the pieces, so where are they finding those guys? You got Renell Rain coming back off injury too. You've got Josh Tupou coming back off of opting out for the season. So I don't know, like, where does that defensive tackle group shake out? And then you look at the ends, and you got Hubbard out there. You've got Carl Lawson is a free agent. You've got Khalid Kareem, who played a somewhat substantial role this year. Didn't show much in terms of pass rush, though, which has obviously been the big issue for the team. So, we talked about in the intro. It really seems like the D line needs to be a lot more of a priority than we're acting like it needs to be.
100%, because like right now they have a handful of like quality like run stoppers, but they have no one who can consistently win as a pass rusher under contract. And I guess the only one is Geno Atkins, and we just talked ad nauseum about him. So like it kind of makes me feel for the Covingtons and the Williams, because I think there's just solid role players, but when you already have Tupou and Wren and McKenzie under contract, it's like, they're just the definition of expendable, unfortunately, and they're not going to have a vast market, so they could always be available to come back for cheap, but it just seems like they might just be considered afterthoughts. But going on that point about how they addressed it in free agency, this is a good point to bring up, because like with how saturated the offensive guard market is getting right now, and like there's tackles that are entering the market as well, like the price for quality offensive linemen is only just trickling down the more the guys get available. But defensive line, like those prices will still be premium, and those guys' value are still high. And if we are working under the assumption that the Bengals are not only going to attack offensive line but defensive line for agency, I think you're right. Like potentially, like the higher priced guys, or maybe the one or two big additions in terms of price that they make, it might be a pass rusher, it might be an end, it might be a three technique, because right now, like they have as little answers there as they do at right guard and right tackle. And if they can find cheap answers, still quality players at offensive line, but not the in the Joe Thuney price range, then they have more capital to address an equally big need on the other side of the ball.
Yeah, because like everything we talk about, everything we do, there's tiers, and I'm sure there's going to be some Bengals are cheap, Mike Brown's cheap type comments in the chat here, but yeah, you can get a guy on a budget without really lowballing it. And especially this year, because there's so many people out there. I mean, I know there's some injury issues and potential retirements and stuff, but the Chiefs just got both of their tackles.
And they're letting their center go. Reader, I think.
Like, what is going on? Like that's insane. I also think it's a great reason why they didn't use the franchise tag, because I feel like people aren't getting the money we think they're going to get. That's my feeling, is things are just going to come in quite a bit lower. There might be a lot of 1-year deals because players realize that, and they're like, well, we'll try it out next year. But Carl Lawson, I don't see Carl Lawson getting $18 million on the open market right now. So, I mean, we'll see what becomes of it. But yeah, they definitely need to address those areas. It's a pretty solid draft class, for the O-line and the D-line, I think. I don't think there's not defensive linemen that I would take at 5.
No.
Even if Penne and Chase, and if the top 3 picks were Penne, Chase, and Pitts, I'm still not really looking at defensive play. I'm probably trading, but there's not really anybody in that type of realm. But I think there's a lot of good pass rushers. I think there's some guys you can find in the second round, maybe in the third round, that can contribute. And on the interior too, I think there's a lot of really high upside defensive tackles who can rush the passer. And we're going to see how good the Bengals are doing homework and stuff and finding some of those guys, because I think there could be a guy that's a potential steal in that type of group. So yeah, any other thoughts on the defensive line?
Well, when you throw in the draft aspect too, you have to, if you're just using like both ways to construct the roster, like you have to work off of which position groups are strong in the draft and which are strong stronger in free agency. Like you mentioned, like there's no defensive lineman that's worth really a top 10 pick this year. And really with defensive tackles, like I think Daniel Jeremiah said the best, like there might not be one that gets drafted in the first round. Like Barrymore of Alabama might be the only one. And so it's just very questionable class with that position group. And you have an edge class that's very deep, I guess, in day two, even though it might not be exactly top heavy, but there are guards galore, right? And just like there is on the open market, there are plenty of guards that'll be taken in rounds 2 or 3 that could potentially start immediately. And I think the same goes with tackles as well. So if the Bengals are looking at like, okay, we need a pass rushing defensive tackle, and we might not be able to find a good one in the draft. We might go ahead and spend some of that money in free agency at that position, and then attack where the draft is deep at edge rusher and guard, and take care of the tackle too. So you have to just recognize, I guess, where is it free agency, is it the draft? Which area is the strongest for these types of positions? Because they're definitely going to be the ones that are getting an influx of bodies.
I'm gonna throw out a bold take here. I think 10 tackles go in the top 50 picks.
Yeah, that sounds accurate, actually.
Like there's 10 guys that are like there's 10 guys that I could see going in round 1. Like I don't think 10 guys will go in round 1, but there's 10 guys I could see going in round 1. Like the Bengals even in round 2. Like I don't know if you're in a necessarily a great place to take a tackle because there could be so many gone. We keep Alex Leatherwood consistently being mocked in round 2. Like, there's no way that guy's going round 2. That guy's going round 1.
Right.
Like, there's some good players there. So, I think that is a natural transition then too, because, and I'll mention this on the draft. A lot of people and in Bengals Twitter, like we're talking about how to improve this team, and I see a lot of people talking about, hey, get a tackle, and and still draft Penny, but you're going to spend a bunch of money on Trent Williams, and then you're going to go and you're going to draft Penei Sewell at 5. Like, to me, it's just a poor use because you've already got Jonah. Like, Jonah's good. Right. Like, he has to stay healthy. Obviously, he needs to come along. But now you got a new coach, and that's a guy that you drafted really high. And, like, look, I don't want to be the guy that says this player is good because remember that one play he made, but remember that blitz he picked up against the Browns in week 2? Like, holy shit, that was a dude play. Like, who makes that play? Like, who makes that block? Like, the guy's good.
He's that's the block of a natural left tackle right there.
Yes, exactly. Like,
he is.
I mean, to me, it's just like, you know what? Like, I don't know. Like, if you want to spend money on Joe Thuney and do that, good. But if we're talking about spending a bunch of resources, because that's what it comes down to. Like, you've got maybe 3 big contracts you can do, and then some medium contracts, and then your 5th pick is essentially a big contract. In that you can get a major guy at pick 5, and then 2nd and 3rd round picks are kind of more of those medium tier type contracts where you're hoping for a little bit more, but you're not necessarily getting as much. Why would you spend 2 of those on tackle when your best offensive lineman is a tackle? Like, I don't know. Like, it just seems like a poor usage. Like, just use a guard. Just sign Thuney. Even if you don't believe in paying guards, like you're essentially paying a guard a lot of money if you move Jonah Williams to guard. So anyway, that does bring us to the offensive line, and I love the way you broke this down on the offensive line accurately. That they don't have anybody that plays on the right side. Like, that's the thing that we're not saying about Kevin Zeitler. That I probably is my favorite thing about Kevin Zeitler is that he actually plays right guard. So yeah, look, Jonah's the guy. Like, in this group, Jonah's the best of this group. But like, I don't know how we could say anything else. Trey is also good. And then there's a lot of question marks, right?
Question marks is like putting it nicely, because the cleanest question mark is Xavier Suafilo, who we knew last year was a left guard, but they pigeonholed him at right guard. He got injured because he's Xavier Suafilo, and then he finished the year at left guard because that's where he belongs. So yeah, that's how it happened. And like I'm sure they want to give Michael Jordan another year to just like see what they can do with him. He's still 23. That's the good thing about guys who are drafted 21. They're sometimes the same age as some rookies in year 3. Fred, Hakeem, we've talked a lot about them. I guess you can put Fred like at either left or right. I just put him at left because I think he has more experience at left. Hakeem, they specifically placed him at left tackle. They did not move him around at all. And I don't even know, like, I think Isaiah Prince was the left tackle in Miami or at Ohio State. I just don't quite remember it. But yeah, so he opted out as well. So yeah, there's nothing here. Like, aside from Jonah and Trey might not be back until like October. We have no idea about that. Like, you did bring up like when Frank Pollock was hired, like Billy Price is a little bit better than what we remember him in 2018. Like he did some technical things that we just haven't seen from him yet, and I don't know how much that has to do with the fact that he was asked to play guard. I thought he would be better or just okay at guard because I thought that was where he was best at Ohio State, and he ended up being worse at guard compared to center, which is saying something. So I mean, I hope that Pollock gets something out of him if they have to play him for Hopkins, who's coming back, but like Price is kind of an expensive piece for someone who just isn't really doing a lot right now.
So Zach Taylor gets accused of coach speak a lot, and there's some comments about the interview saying that he didn't say anything in it, the recent interview, which I kind of laugh at, and because I wouldn't say anything either, but giving the media sound bites isn't what your job is. Your job is to win football games. He hasn't done that, but it's not helping to give them sound bites either. So on that note, though, Billy Price, John Ross, both embattled players with the Bengals, first round draft picks who've had their struggles. John Ross, he kind of defended when he was he's working on some things like when they didn't have him active, but he was pretty adamant about Billy. Like, man, Billy's the kind of guy we want around. Like he's all in, and I feel like it's hard to see these things, but I feel like he's a guy that even when he wasn't playing, you'd see him on the sideline just getting jacked up and excited for people. So I don't know. You see that? I think he's got a lot of positive things in his character, I think. And from what we know about Jim Turner, some people just don't respond to that kind of guy. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe we could get a lot more out of Billy this year. Maybe this could be the year that Billy takes a step forward, and not saying that you're going to say, yeah, that's a first round center right there, but but maybe we can get a lot more out of him. Maybe he can become a solid player. And I mean, yeah, he might need it with the trade situation. So yeah, with Frank Pollock coming in, we'll see what happens. It'll also be interesting to see. I think if you look at his past of drafts, he's a little bit all over the place with arm length. The Bengals have a couple guys, and Jonah Williams and Hakeem, who are considered guards by a lot of people because they're slightly short arms. So it'll be interesting to see if that's a factor, if that's something that Pollock cares about, because I don't think Jim Turner did, or maybe Duke Tobin. It's hard to say exactly who was making that decision, but
I will say this about that. I remember back in 2015, which is the first year that Pollock took over for Bill Callahan as the Cowboys offensive line coach. I heard that the Bengals didn't view Lau Collins as a tackle. He was 6'4", 305, coming out of LSU with 33-inch arms, which is basically the same thing as Rashawn Slater. But obviously the Cowboys, that whole situation with Lyle in that draft was wild too, because he was falsely accused of something.
That was a weed mask thing, right?
No, that was Laramie Tunsil. I think it was murder or something crazy. but
Oh,
like he
geez.
like fell like all the way out of the draft. The Cowboys signed him, gave him like a big signing bonus because they knew he was innocent. Signed him as an
Oh, it was
undrafted
with,
free
okay. It was
agent.
I think with his girlfriend or something, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Okay. Oh, I remember that now.
and then I mean they developed him at tackle, and that was under Pollock as well. But and then Pollock was the guy that drafted or loved Mekhi Becton. He developed him like as a great rookie. So I think you're right. He's kind of all over the place in what he likes in terms of measurables, but there is at least one example of a guy who was a good tackle in college, but maybe projected size wise at guard, but ended up being a good tackle in the pros.
Hmm. Yeah. So I mean, that would be interesting to see how that goes and what they think. I mean, obviously Penny's the guy that we're targeting. We're thinking about right now. No telling if he's there at 5 for sure or not. Um, so yeah, looking at this group, the guys that aren't there, that are free agents. Quentin Spain was a left guard as well, by
Mm-hmm.
trade, I believe, and Alex Redmond, of course, um, who you just can't seem to keep down. Uh, he keeps coming back. Um, So yeah, I mean, from what we're looking at there, like you're looking at right tackle, possibly moving on from Bobby Hart to save some money. Although we think some of these moves would probably be happening right now, that we talk about for saving money, that we've presumed for saving money, since a lot of other teams are doing that stuff right now, and and then we're looking at potentially both guard spots. So you make a good point. I mean, you get a guard, maybe not even a Joe Thuney, but you get a good guard, a good solid starter in free agency. You draft a Penny, and then do you draft a? Jeez, I lost his name. This the center from Bama in round
Dickerson.
2, or you know what I mean? Like you make a good point. There's some good options there. Um, Yeah, I mean, what do you think they need to do to address this position? Is it 3 new starters?
I think ideally it's 3. Like my whole thing is that, and I think you talked about this on Twitter before. Like it kind of sucks in this way that the draft comes after free agency. This is just a situation where you'd love if it was kind of flipped, because
Mm,
I don't know how you can go in. I don't know how you can exit free agency without getting someone who can at least play tackle, and then you're just pigeonholing yourself into
yeah.
taking one of Sewell or Slater at 5. Like that's why like a guy like Matt Filer or Feeler from Pittsburgh or Darrell Williams comes to mind as guys. I think, I mean, like Filer played guard for Pittsburgh last year, but he was probably better at tackle, at right tackle. So he at least has, you can pencil him in at either position. And I think Darrell Williams has played most of his time, or if not all of his time, at right tackle, but he could also project into guard if you need him to. So just getting a guy that can play at multiple spots for a reasonable deal can give you flexibility to not be forced to take a Sewell, but
Mm.
like that would be an example of, even if you sign a guy who can play tackle, you would still take Sewell because you just like him that much, for the long term in the future, and it just helps you out immediately.
Yeah, that's a good point. And yeah, you just don't want to spend $20 million on that guy and then tell him to play guard, or say, hey, we're going to move our first round pick from 2 years ago, who is a ridiculous athlete and has been was our best lineman last year. We're going to make him play a different position. So, yeah, no, I'm with you on that. And then there's like I thought Zach Banner from Pittsburgh's kind of an interesting one in the same sort of realm. I mean, no, not a fan.
I just haven't really like, he hasn't really been talked about, because like I'm like, how much did he start last year? Did he start the entire year?
I believe he started a few games, and I think he got hurt.
His name I haven't really heard a lot about.
Yeah, no, I'm looking it up.
He's from a USC guy, right?
That sounds right. I don't know. He was just a guy, like it seemed like he was doing some good things for a while there, and then he kind of slipped off. I believe he was playing guard, and he won the right tackle job, and then I think he got hurt. Oh, it says he only played one game this year. Maybe I was thinking last year because oh no, he only started one game last year too. Oh, I don't know. I'm projecting the crap out of this guy apparently. But I mean I don't know. I mean,
Give
is
him a
that a
Bobby Hart deal.
yeah, I was gonna say, is that a Bobby Hart move? What is it at that point? I don't know. Um, I mean, is that why they're not cutting Bobby Hart? Is Bobby Hart their guy? Like, are they just gonna hold off on that on that again for you? Be like, we'll figure it out with him.
Yeah,
Um,
because because they cut BJ Finney with like no regard. Like they just axed him because they didn't bother to play him last year after trading for him. But they're holding on to Gino and Bobby until they feel like they don't have to, I guess. That's fine, but
yeah,
it still makes sense as to why they are projected to be cap casualties because you have to figure they're looking for upgrades to those spots.
yeah, absolutely. So that's the O line. I mean, yeah. So we hit on it. We cover it there. I mean, those are the two big things.
Right.
I think offensively, you look at quarterback and they re-signed Brandon Allen. Like, they're not signing a veteran, right?
Yeah, no, they're fine.
So it's Brandon Allen, and Joe Burrow's going to start week 1 because he's Joe Burrow. So I'm not really that concerned about it. So I mean, that's pretty much what it is. And Taylor alluded to it, and I wouldn't be shocked if they drafted a guy like super late because they were like because they thought he could be what maybe they think that guy's the future backup, and they're not sold on Finney or Finley, or they think they can develop him and trade him or something. But yeah, I think that's pretty much good, and I don't think we're going to see any free agency. Running back, they got Mixon coming back, they got Gio. Samaje is the big factor here, and largely because of special teams. But I think Samaje actually, he was very impressive to me when he came in and was playing.
Incredibly impressive.
In his pass protection too. I didn't know that about him. Like he was really good in pass protection. So he's a very good all around running back to me.
I mean, he was probably the one doing that in Oklahoma with Mixon because Mixon would have like question marks with that.
That's a good point. That makes sense. You got Travion there competing as well. I mean, I want to say XFL, but the Patrick, you get in there. So I don't know. I mean, I don't see them making any kind of real splash there either. And hopefully, I think Samaje would be a good one to bring back because he gives you that third guy and that special teams guy. And look, as we talk about special teams, like I was asked this once on Twitter about, well, how many teams keep a guy around, for special teams? I think a fair amount do, and I live in Rhode Island, so I follow the Patriots quite a bit because I live in Rhode Island. Like, Brandon Bolden has been a running back for the Patriots for years, and he plays special teams. And then it's funny too because he could tell his teammates love him because there'd be like preseason games when they'll just let him play running back, and everybody's just jazzed up for him to play running back. So everybody loves him, but and obviously they've got Slater at receiver, who's the man, never plays receiver. They've got Nate Ebner, who is
safety.
Yeah, he's a reserve safety for them. He kind of plays a little bit of situationally, but he's basically a special teams guy. By the way, Nate Ebner, Ohio State rugby player.
Wow.
Nate Ebner. That's such a Belichick thing that he found a rugby player. But so teams do it, and keeping Samaje around, it's not like it's going to cost a lot. Just because you like what he does on special teams, that's a good move. Even though I can't think of a play of him playing special teams specifically. Things don't stand out, But if he's contributing in a big way, bringing back that third running back can be a big deal for that. So
people got to remember though, they only have 52 players on the roster right now. They're only going to sign a handful of free agents. They're going to draft 7 or 8 guys, and they're going to sign 10 or 12 undrafted guys. They still need to bring back guys to fill out the 90. P. Ryan's going to cost you $1 million. It's fine if you have 5 running backs throughout the offseason. There's nothing wrong with that.
Oh yeah, nothing wrong at all. And like I said, we've seen his versatility, and Mixon goes down, Gio goes, whoever it is, like he can fill in for whatever role. And I think they are required to have at least 2 Oklahoma running backs at all times. So
Mm-hmm.
he keeps them at the quota. Um,
Rest in
so
peace, Rodney Anderson.
yeah. So let's talk receiver. So that's the other big area that we talk about here. And you're not a lot of guys under contract in this area. You've obviously got 2 really good ones. You got Boyd in the slot, and you've got last year's second round pick T. Higgins, who showed some really great promise last year for you, and started to really develop a connection with Burrow. You got Tate, fan favorite Tate. You've got Stanley Morgan, who I love as a special teams guy, and I've been adamant about him in coverage. Trent Irwin's a guy that I predicted that I called him as a sleeper to make the active roster because he's a really good blocker at receiver. the Bengals love guys that can block, but so it doesn't surprise me he stuck around in the practice squad all year. But yeah, I mean, AJ not coming back. Who's going to be that third guy? We've talked about going out and getting a speed guy in free agency as a mid-tier free agency guy. Obviously, a lot of talk about reuniting Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase with that first-round pick. I think he's going to Miami at 3. That's just my opinion. Not a lot of talk. Like, we don't hear anybody being like, let's go get Chris Godwin. You know what I mean? Like
He got tagged.
Did he get tagged too?
Yeah.
I didn't realize because Galladay didn't though, right?
Galladay is hitting the market.
So like we don't really hear like, hey, go spend money on Galladay. And Robinson got tagged, right?
Mm.
Yeah. So it kind of interests me that people are like all gung ho on Chase, but I haven't heard anybody say, hey, let's go spend money on Galladay or one of the other guys before they got tagged. Just more talk about like just getting a mid-level speed guy like a Curtis Samuel, a Josh Reynolds. What are your thoughts on this area?
I think people are so adamant about Chase and not about a free agent receiver because they just want to spend on the O-line and they just see Chase as the guy that Burrow played with, and he might be available with that pick, and it just like kind of fits all perfectly. Like I think Blake Jewell said this really good. Like people shouldn't want Jamar Chase just because he played with Joe Burrow. That makes it an easy evaluation because all the tape that you have on him is with the quarterback that they have. But you want Jamar Chase because he fits perfectly with this offense and what they need.
Mm-hmm.
And Galladay is a great example. Like he would fit perfectly in this offense. As a guy who's phenomenal with contested catches and third down conversions. Like if you replaced him with AJ Green last year, the offense is just miles better. Like even if Galladay is not a burner, a guy who can take the top off and stack on cornerbacks, he just brings an element that they need. Like, and Auden Tate, as good as he is in a niche role, like you can survive with him as your third receiver, but it's just so much difficult. People don't remember, I guess, when prime AJ and prime Chad were out there, and everything was just so easy. The separation was there, and the offense was in so much more of a rhythm, and it wasn't so hard with all these contested catches coming down because guys can't really separate. So that's why it was important for AJ to kind of come back, or to John Ross to ascend to a higher role, because without both those guys being who they were, the offense just it was so much more difficult to move the ball down the field if defenses were accounting for Higgins and Boyd. So they need that dynamic playmaker, or they need someone like Galladay who could just be dominant at the catch point but still have more athleticism than Tate.
Yeah, I was a big Galladay guy coming out, but when they were talking franchise with him and the money they're talking, I don't even think it's worth it. But yeah, that's interesting. That we're getting into that. I think the whole thing with the connection between Burrow and Chase, it's great in September, but you put a large investment into a receiver, Burrow's going to learn to play with him pretty quickly. You know what I mean? So I don't know how much value that really has, but yeah, he does fit perfectly. He's one of two guys who I think really fit, with the Bengals, and the other one plays tight end. And they lost Kyle Pitts. Like both those guys, like just excellent contested catch guys, would give them a different type of dimension. I I don't know. To me, Chase is a speed guy. People say he's not that fat. Like he plays fast. Like
Yeah.
and he can stretch the field pretty well. So I mean, I think he gives you a pretty good element there. We talk about speed. We mentioned a couple of guys. John Brown available now. Not really a guy that is getting a lot of talk in Bengal circles. Will Fuller's out there too, right? And
Yeah.
Will Fuller is basically John Ross. Like it's the same mold. Fuller also has some injuries, but not quite as serious, quite as nagging. But he's obviously had a lot higher highs in the NFL than Ross has. So I don't know. There's some interesting names out there. I think you get a Josh Reynolds. You don't spend a ton of money on a guy that because you need to get some guys. You're lacking some depth there anyway. So you need to attack it, but that is, like you talked about, a tackle, a position where you can get some guys and still leave yourself open to spending heavily on it in the draft. I think there are some interesting guys late in the draft too, who could be a fit. There's definitely some nice speed guys. I'm blanking on his name, but the kid from Oklahoma, I think, is a pretty good contested catch cover guy. I think could Oklahoma State, excuse me.
Wallace.
I think he could fit with what they're trying to do offensively as well. So, I mean, you think this is definitely an area where they need to do something in free agency, though, right?
100%. They can't enter the draft with Auden Tate being like their third guy. Like, and you just look at the guys that are available. Like, it's filled. If you think the guards spot is saturated now, like look at the wide receiver part. Like that's why Galladay would be great, but it's a question of value. Are you willing to pay top dollar for a guy when you can get still a quality player for a lot cheaper, because there's just so many other dudes out there? Like Keelan Cole is a great example from Jacksonville. Marvin Jones is out there. Sammy Watkins, you mentioned John Brown. T.Y. Hilton is quietly available, even though he's 32. Cody Core is back on the market. Curtis Samuel, you mentioned before. Juju Smith-Schuster's out there, but he's not coming here, obviously. But yeah, there's just so many. Oh man,
he can be roommates with Von Bell.
Yeah, it'd be a great sitcom opportunity right there. And Reynolds was mentioned just because he has history with Taylor and whatnot. So like the list goes on, and like these guys are not going to sign like crippling contracts for any team that's in salary cap hell. So it would be shocking if the Bengals didn't sign like one guy in that second or third wave at this position, because like you said, like they're losing Green snaps, they're losing an opportunity for Ross, and they just have negative explosion on their team. And as well-ly developed that T. Higgins was as a rookie, like you still need a little bit more.
Yeah. And it'd be interesting to see too how that breaks down. Somebody asked me on Twitter recently about how long will it take Penny to get to where he can be, and like the value basically of taking a veteran offensive lineman compared to drafting one. I think when you talk about rookies versus veterans, I think you get the same sort of thing with the receiver position, that some of these guys, receiver can be pretty tough to draft, and some of these guys don't come along very well. You look at John Ross was the third receiver taken in that draft, and Davis and Mike Williams both took some time. They're both pretty good now, but they both took some time to get to where they were in that draft. And like there were times where it was like, oof, like that draft class is a bust. So yeah, I mean it definitely can be a little bit difficult for those guys to transition into the league. So definitely some getting some veteran receivers. I think that has some value to kind of bolster Burrow as well, having that element, and those guys that understand that aspect of it in the offense.
Right, and this is this is an example of you kind of wish the Bengals had like a lot of mid-round picks because I mean that's like the sweet spot I guess for receivers and like this class. Like I think Diami Brown comes to mind as like a Jamar Chase light, a guy who's just young and had a lot of deep ball production. Like that's definitely something that they're gonna like. That's something that I think Tobin and Taylor both emphasize, or Burrow, excuse me. Like that's got to be an improvement, and it's not all on. Like Joe Burrow, like improving his accuracy or the protection. It's about receivers getting separation and fighting for it down there. So get guys who have experience doing that, and it just kind of opens up your offense a lot.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a lot of, I mean, both those guys from North Carolina are pretty good with Newsom. Is some people think he's a little bit more slack guy because he's a little shorter, but you get some speed in that guy. The guy I was alluding to earlier from Oklahoma State, Tylan Wallace, I think he's a pretty good jump ball guy. And if you want a speed guy, Anthony Schwartz from Auburn can flip and fly.
Right.
And again, that's a mid-round guy too. So it's really interesting because I feel like it's like the Royal Sampler. You know what I mean? Like that's a really obscure Simpsons reference, but, like it's not like, oh well, you can find a lot of receivers, but they're all kind of the same guy. Like you can find whatever type of receiver you're looking for, and you can definitely find him around 3. You can probably find him around 4. Like there's a good number of guys out there in this draft. So definitely be interesting to see how that breaks down. So that gets us to the tight end position. That'll be the last one. We'll round out the offense and we'll head back over to DBs to wrap this thing up. But tight end, look, tight end is not a need. However, that does not mean you don't consider Kyle Pitts.
No, of course not.
So I just want to be clear on that. But I think like Uzama and Sample give you a nice little 1-2 punch. I think you're fine with that. If you can find a guy who's going to be the guy, you do it. But I think you get some pretty good things out of them. Sample had some nice flashes and then some really disappointing moments. You're like, ugh. It's just like plays where you're like, ooh, he does not move that well, or ooh, he should have caught that. But then he also he did some really good things. He developed into a pretty solid blocker this year, and he also had some decent catches here and there. Ethan Carter, we mentioned, free agent. His hands have been an issue for him in the past. He had a couple of nice plays when he was playing a little bit more with CJ Hurt this year. I think. Yeah, so I think they're fine. But yeah, if you can find Pitts and all of a sudden your offense has a new dimension, you freaking do it. What are your thoughts on this group?
Like, first starting with Pitts, like not only is this the whole you draft just for long-term fixes and you don't pass up elite talents if he's the best guy available. Like that's one reason to take Kyle Pitts, but also people are so hesitant, I think, about tight ends. It's because they typically don't really shine until, either late in their rookie contracts or when they're already veterans. Like CG is almost a great example of that. He's finally hitting his stride and he's 28, 29 years old. So that's the hesitation with Kyle Pitts. From the get-go he's going to be productive. He's just that special, and there's no logical reason why you look at this group right in front of you and say, yeah, that they couldn't use him. So they are 100% fine. I don't think he's almost getting cut. I think that was a weird narrative to start in the first place. I think Sample is okay for what you want as number 2, and I would expect Ethan Carter to come back and just kind of round out the group. And if that's it, then that's it. I think there's definitely some chemistry brewing between Uzoma and Sample and Burrow. I think all those guys are really close. Sample and Burrow are working out together. In I think a Blue Ash Gym, I forget the name of it, and obviously Uzoma and Burrow kind of rehab together, and there was a connection kind of forming before Uzoma went down. So I think they like that starting duo, and they obviously like what Ethan Carter brings to special teams. So it's there's just not a lot to say because it's just solid. But if you have the chance to take Kyle Pitts, then he's clearly the best guy available. If the draft happens like that, then there's the logic to not take him does not outweigh the logic to take him.
Yeah, and I meant what I said before. I think he's the second best receiver for the Bengals in this draft. I am a big Devontae Smith fan. I just don't think he makes sense for the Bengals. I just don't think he's the right guy for the Bengals. I it I don't know. I'm really close, but if you called, I wouldn't argue somebody calling Devontae Smith the number one receiver in this draft. Like I get the logic behind it, um, and I think he's a dude, and I'm not scared of his size like some people are because I'm not. But anyway, I just don't think he makes a ton of sense. But I think those guys in the way they're used to playing and winning those jump balls, those back shoulders, which Joe Burrow is incredible at throwing.
Mhm.
You know, like because they have one of their higher performing things matches up so perfectly with something that Joe Burrow does so well. Like I think that just makes it an incredible fit for those guys at that spot. So with Pitts, you're getting that, and he's a pretty good blocker.
He's better
Like
than
the
people give
narrative
him
on him
credit for.
is that he's not. He's pretty good.
He's
Like,
not bad.
um, and maybe it could be better. You know, like it might develop into more. Because he's a pretty big, strong dude. Like I don't know what his nothing comes out on film really like that shows his demeanor. Like, is he a prick? I don't know. Um, that's the best thing that anybody that blocks can be. That, by the way, is a prick. Um, like that's about the highest compliment you can give a lineman is wow, dude, you're a prick.
Somebody said this about his blocking though. He loses slow, and I feel like that works so perfectly.
Well, all right, well, run fast behind him then.
Yeah, because like he doesn't always sustain it, but like he doesn't lose immediately, which is like for what he is. That's all you kind of
Yeah.
want.
That'll work. That'll work for now. So yeah, I don't know. That's my thought on that position. And then, yeah, I think we're definitely on the same page there. So that gets us to defensive back, and look, I think this is another group where you look at starters and you look at depth, and depth was the issue last year, which was largely because they lost a starter basically immediately.
Mhm.
And now they're looking at potentially listening to other William Jackson. So William Jackson, uh, heading into free agency. Now they've got Trey Waynes, who they was a very high prospect, somewhat disappointing in Minnesota, but okay. Maybe overpaid for him a little bit. Would have been very cool to see the two of those guys together. But we're looking like we're never going to get that. And now you're looking at Trey, who's a bit unproven, and we've never seen play in this defense, is your CB1. LaShawn Sims is a free agent, so there's that.
Oh damn!
But yeah, I don't know. So is that, and then there's Mackenzie Alexander. I think he did a really good job at nickel. He's a free agent. People act like he's gone. He's a nickel. He's not going to cost that much, so I don't know why we act like he's gone. I mean, I definitely think that would be a good move to bring him back. And you got Darius Phillips. Is kind of the next guy in there, and I don't know. I just don't feel like Darius Phillips should be on the field all the time. I think he's a good spot starter. I think he's a great CB4 because I think he can play all cornerback positions. I don't want him to be my CB2 though. So yeah, like definitely need to address the depth. Definitely need to figure out who you're starting. What are your thoughts about corner?
People love Phillips, I think, because whenever he is on the field, he usually does something pretty like that the other cornerbacks don't. It's like make plays on the ball or like haul interceptions. Like and that's fine, but the more that he's on the field, the more variant of a player that you see. And that's kind of what we saw towards the end of 2019 when he had like some interceptions, but also got burned towards the end of the season, especially against Cleveland. So like
Yeah.
if if Phillips is your starter, then you're going to get some impact plays, and that's why like I kind of like advocated towards like like he should be the starter opposite of William because like he's the best that they have, and he gives you ball production. But at the same time, they kind of realize that the more that he's out there, the more mistakes that he makes because he's not really a starting caliber guy, and that's a very unfortunate situation now with William out the door because look at who they have left. It's Winston Rose and Donnie Lewis Jr. Like I don't know what to make of the Mackenzie Alexander thing. Like it would make sense to bring him back because he's a good player. He's not going to cost that much, but for whatever reason, there's apparently stuff about like him and the coaching staff like not seeing eye to eye, which is I guess more or less what is being said about Williams. So it's just a lot of unknowns about like the relationships between some of these DBs and that part of the coaching staff and. But it's not like losing Alexander is going to kill you. There's going to be guys on the market. There's going to be guys in the draft that can fill that spot. It's really is about like trying to find someone other than Darius Phillips or finding someone that can kind of rotate into a Darius Phillips a little bit better than LaShawn Sims. But that's not what you want, obviously, because we saw what happened with that last year and the struggles and the difficulties of that. It just kind of seems like cornerback is almost going to be left out to dry when they're addressing everything else.
Yeah, and I don't know, cornerback. Like I coach DBs by trade. Like that was what I spent a lot of my life doing, and I studied it for a long time. And cornerback is kind of my specialty. Cornerbacks in the draft are really, really hard to predict because I feel like everybody's looking for something different. I feel like, and I don't think I'm alone in this. I feel like it's hard to tell where guys are going to go. So I don't know. Like I don't know if that's a spot where you can get somebody in the second round or not, who's going to be the guy for you. Because a lot of the big names we're talking about are going to go in round one. So I don't know. That's a pretty big concern for me. I would feel much better if they went out and found somebody else and spent a good amount of money on somebody, maybe somebody named William Jackson, but like, yeah, I don't know. That's a big issue for me. I think like it was the pass rush, but it was also the CB2. And you mentioned like that second Cleveland game, like that they almost won that second Cleveland game. Like they were up with like 2 minutes left. Mackenzie Alexander missed the sack. Even though he was supposed to bringing in Alexander and Waynes, like that was like, hey, we're gonna have better tacklers. He missed the sack, and Phillips got burned 2 or 3 times on that drive. It was the same throw where Baker threw an interception to Phillips earlier in the game,
right?
And then Baker just started hitting it, and they were to nobodies too. They were like one of them was to the guy that was supposed to only be a slot for Michigan.
Yeah, Donovan Peoples-Jones.
Yeah. One of them was to him, and they weren't to like Odell left that game, I think. So like it wasn't like they were the big name guys, and they weren't getting it. So definitely a concern there. Speaking of concern, Andrew, have a concern for me. Andrew, do not have COVID. Appreciate the love. Appreciate the concern there. Massachusetts, due to COVID, the state of Massachusetts moved their high school football season from the fall to late spring or early spring. So I actually am coaching high school football right now, which is quite a bit of yelling and quite a bit of being outside in the cold. So that's why I sound like this. And so sorry for the poor sound quality of recent podcasts with my voice being in the kind of shape it's in.
You've been coaching O-line, right?
Yeah, I'm coaching. I'm probably like the only guy in the world that coaches. I'm coaching DBs and O-line. So yeah, it's a bit a bit crazy. You gotta like go in with 2 completely different demeanors, like.
Right,
like you're like Two-Face from Batman, just like switching gears mid practice. But no, it's been great. We had our first game week from tomorrow on Friday, so excited to get out there with those guys. But let's talk about safety now. So that would be that. So that's the last spot we've got to go to, kind of rounding out the defensive backfield here. Um, I mean, hey, lot more to feel good about here, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you got Bates. Hopefully, a Bates extension is in the works. I think you were actually talking about it a couple of weeks ago on Twitter that the Bengals generally don't change the current contract, the current year contract, when it comes to extensions. So they could give him an extension and it wouldn't necessarily hurt this year's cap if they did it that way. So, that's a possibility. And so extending Bates doesn't mean you can't sign somebody else in free agency necessarily if you do it the right way. Travion Henderson, man, he's a hanger on too, huh? I mean,
Yeah.
that guy knows how to stick around. Um, Sean Williams likely out the door, and I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like Sean Williams can still do some things in this league. I was
Oh, he can absolutely contribute. It's just like you just felt like he could have had a bigger role this year, and then they just never
yeah
really gave it to him.
yeah I was a little bit surprised. I never thought he was a great fit for the defense, even though he's massive. I feel like he's just not. He's not a glorified linebacker, which is what
No,
Von Bell is, and Von Bell fit like that like a glove.
he was
Uh,
always like a half shell type of guy, and they run a lot of single high. So
yeah, exactly. Um, so yeah, I mean, Bell ended up being a good fit for that. I think there were some struggles early in the year, but he kind of came into his own and really ended up being a great signing for them. For they got a pretty good deal on him, and he was, they considered him a value signing, and just an opportunity thing, and that, I mean, Suafilo was hurt, Reader was hurt, Trey Waynes was hurt. I mean, Mackenzie Alexander was pretty good, but Von Bell might have been your best signing last year.
100%.
Like that's pretty crazy to think about. It's a bit unfortunate, but yes, I mean that was a solid pickup. And you're looking at Sean Williams being gone, and you're looking at Brandon Wilson, being the big name you're looking to, whether or not you're going to bring back there. Definitely could use some depth there, and that's definitely an area where you can get some special teams help. I think Henderson's had some roles on special teams in the past, so
He's just
that's
never really been healthy like at all. Seems like
yeah,
'cause-
yeah. I mean, he's definitely struggled to stay on the field, but I mean, he seems like he's had some roles in that like area, and that's I don't know. I think I feel
right.
like that's why he kind of stuck around what he did. But yeah, what are your thoughts on the safety position?
Yeah, with Henderson, like because there was no preseason last year, we haven't like seen him play since 2019, which is
Mm,
probably like the last time in preseason. So like I'm sure he'll just stick around for the offseason. But with Bates and Bell, like it's clearly your strongest position group. And if you bring back Wilson, you just place him behind Bell, who like I don't know, like Wilson. I remember when he came out, like I thought like this dude's kind of like a running back. He like made a lot of plays with the ball in his hand, and then he had a lot of turnovers and touchdowns.
Yeah,
He
and he
seemed,
was a running back in Houston, and like I think when
yeah,
they drafted him, I think on ESPN they announced him as a running back, and then
right.
no, he's a safety.
And then like he started off as like a deep safety, and then they kind of moved him into more of an like almost an overhang like slot defender. But then he just ended up being like the guy to back up Von Bell at strong safety whenever he was on defense. So yeah, you just bring him back, and he's not going to cost that much. And then you got your four leading up to the draft. I'm sure they would consider taking a guy on day 3 to be like more of a long term backup to Bates or God forbid insurance. Like I think they are 100% going to get something done with Bates. Like you mentioned the contract structure, like that's what they did with last year with Joe Mixon because I think they knew there was going to be some salary cap implications.
Mhm.
Like they didn't give him a year 1 roster bonus. They didn't up his base salary. I think that's more or less going to be what happens with Bates. Like no team like around the league right now. Like you've seen all these void years. You're pushing signing bonus prorations in 2 years that don't exist on the contract. Like I think that might be what happens with Bates. Like they won't give him a ton of a high base salary or roster bonus with the extension, but they're going to push his higher salary years into the future when the cap goes up because like they have to.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely interesting the way they structure those things, and yeah, it's a good way to account for these younger guys that you need to take care of, even though it's tough to do that financially with that stuff right now. Um, and Bates, I mean, yeah, I mean, like he's the dude. And once some things come together, they start to get a little bit more pressure to his ball hawking style, kind of where he's at, where he aligns and everything like that. I mean, there's just gonna be more opportunities for him, and hopefully he'll finally get the respect he deserves in the league. Because he's the guy. He's definitely the guy.
Getting started, man. He's only 24. Like that's rare.
That is
To be that
insane.
good, young.
Yeah. That is crazy to think of that he's that young. So, all right. So look, let's kind of wrap this thing up. And look, I think we need O line. We've established we need D line. Receivers a need. Oh, but let's talk about like those secondary depth, rotational type needs. Like what do you think are the less obvious needs? Where you're not necessarily a starter, but you're going to play a key role.
Well, I think you can throw cornerback in there, like with wide receiver as a guy that like they
Yes,
need another
absolutely.
body. Yeah, yep. and they need depth. It's like if they didn't need so much O line, D line, like you would look at cornerback and say this is a glaring ass need, like bolded with red. Just in depth though, like they need depth at edge. They could use depth at safety. I guess you're fine at linebacker. You could use another body there, but and they're fine at running back. Even though you wouldn't mind bringing back Pirine, but I mean, their needs are big needs, and they're unfortunately really important needs that if you don't have, it's really hard to be a good football team, which kind of explains 2 consecutive last place finishes.
Yeah, definitely, and I mean, we see the huge need for depth at DB. I think corner is a position that I would not be surprised if it was similar to last year at linebacker. Like, I don't know if they're going to draft 3, but definitely a couple of guys. Maybe one in the mid and one in the late part of the draft. At that position, I think they could really use that to build up. And yeah, I mean, definitely all over on the D line for sure. With really interior and exterior pass rushers, and you're looking at who are they going to bring back. Hopefully Mike Daniels, but you're still not getting that much out of him from a pass rush standpoint. But man, is he fun? Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
He's definitely going to run around. Yeah. So we look at like the Von Bell thing we talked about. We really touched on this with tight end. Like tight end, you're fine at tight end, but Pitts, you know what I mean? And some people have talked about Zach Ertz. Like it. What other types of spots are there where you think maybe you don't need a guy, but an upgrade? If you get an upgrade for the right price or somebody falling into your lap in the draft or something like that, it could have a major impact.
I think center is a good spot. Like, I think you're fine if Hopkins is healthy, but if like you mentioned Dickerson, like if you get him and he just wows you in camp if he's healthy, like that's something to consider. I think Corey Linsley is available on the market. If you work out a deal with him, like that's obvious. That's an upgrade. Matt Ryder from the Chiefs is also going to be available. Like there are quietly some guys that could give you an upgrade over Hopkins, and you don't like need it, like not more than guard or tackle, but like if the opportunity comes and you kind of whiff on some other things, like it's an opportunity, right? And there's along with Dickerson, there's I think 1 or 2 other guys in the draft that could potentially do that. But yeah, like
I'm a big Creed Humphrey guy.
Creed Humphrey, with guard versatility there too. So like there's options, and I just hate that Hopkins like injured in just the most pointless game, like in the last game of the season, and it just takes him out of potentially the beginning of the season because he really is a solid dude, and we've talked about this before. Like once they get pieces around him, he's going to look a lot better than what he looks like right now.
And it's so great too. Like I think you might have counted up like all the contracts he's had because Like when you go to the practice squad and back, like you're signing a new contract, and then like they cut him so many times, and
Hmm.
like if you look him up on Over the Cap, it's just like stupid. You're like, how old is this guy? But like the guy fought for so long, and then he stuck around and he finally made it, and like yeah, it's like a great story, and you want it. But to completely be freaking Ebenezer Scrooge here and pull the rug out from under things with that, you look at that position, and you could say, well, if the Bengals get a Penny and another guard, and then maybe they drafted Dixon or Creed or somebody like that. Like it could be a situation where maybe he's a guard, you know,
Mm.
but maybe assuming maybe the guy you draft, you're working him in a guard, you're training him at guard, but then maybe he's pushing out Trey, and then you're getting a little better on the offensive line once your offensive line is in a position where it should have been all along, where Trey's like your fourth or fifth guy. Then all of a sudden you're starting to push him with another guys. Similar situation to what happened in Detroit with Frank Ragnow, coming in at guard and eventually
Right.
pushing that out. So that would be an interesting thing to see take place. Although, like I said, we love Trey.
Oh, yeah.
Want to see Trey succeed, but you always have to be thinking about getting better. So that would be an interesting move as well. Any crazy predictions?
Crazy predictions. A bold, crazy one would be like the more expensive signing is on defensive line, just because like they can still get a quality guard or a tackle for a little bit less. But I do think, especially if they don't bring back Lawson, if Lawson ends up leaving, like there's going to be urgency there. There 100%
Yeah.
is.
That is interesting. I mean, yeah, it's also crazy too because it's like I don't know, like if they make a major signing on defense, is that? I mean, they made some big signings on defense last year, but it, like, does that double down on maybe the league isn't as low on Lou Anarumo as we are? Like, I don't know. I mean, money talks, but
Yeah.
like with the way we talk about Anarumo around here, sometimes, like, do you think you guys could be like, yeah, I want to spend my my prime of my career in that defense if they don't have some kind of feeling that things are right there.
Yeah, like I mean, the grievances that we've heard of were just guys that weren't brought in by him and but just ended up not being fits. Now we can say about who Anarumo is and how effective he is as a play caller, but like we heard nothing about the guys that he did bring in, and they brought them in because they felt like they would be good fits, and for the most part, like those guys have fit in and gelled, and I'm sure if they offered a bag to a defensive lineman or two, it would be a guy that they would target for a good reason, and like I think that would be fine. Yeah.
All right. Well, we're at about an hour and a half on this thing. So I think we should probably wrap it up. But yeah, I think definitely some good conversation, good things to think about as we are um, about a week away from the kickoff of free agency, and only a few days really away from tampering,
Yeah.
the legal tampering period. So we're gonna see some action on this stuff. We're gonna see some movement coming pretty quickly. And last year the Bengals spent a lot of money. Um, they've got money, and other teams really don't. And there's a lot of guys opening up, a lot of guys getting out there. The fact that the market is becoming saturated because of these cuts, that's probably going to drive some of these prices down. Like maybe they can do a little bit more than we thought for that reason. So it's going to be interesting to see how all this shakes down, and what they're doing here to take the next step forward as we go into year 2 with Joe Burrow, year 3 with Zach Taylor and company. So, all right. Any final thoughts?
Nah, man, this was good. This was long winded, but I mean that's kind of how these things go. There's a lot to discuss, and there's going to be a lot to discuss in the coming weeks.
All right. Well, definitely Yeah, definitely lots to discuss, and keep to the channel, keep checking it out. I'll be putting out some content. John, always putting out great content. Along with his co-host on his show, Anthony. So make sure you're checking that stuff out. We'll have some good guests and some good preparation for the draft in the coming weeks here. And we'll bring you right up to draft night. We'll have some good stuff that whole weekend. So keep it tuned into Cincy Jungle. Hoo day.